Hi, boys and girls. How are you? It's Mrs. Perugini. So today we are going to continue talking about main idea and supporting details. So all week we have been reading different books, thinking about what that big idea is, and then all of those other little details that support that main idea. As always, one great way to think about main idea and details is kind of like a table. That tabletop is that main idea or the big idea. All of those legs that are holding that table up and supporting it are just like the supporting details from the story, okay? Sometimes I know you saw Miss McNamara create just a little web, a graphic organizer. That's another great way for you to just organize your details that surround the main idea, which is the big idea of the story. So that's always something you want to think about while you are listening to a story. So today, we are going to read a story called The Great Kapok Tree. And while you're listening, pay attention to what you think that big idea is, and then all of the little details that support it. And we've been talking about titles and how titles really give us a good idea as to what a book is going to be all about. So I know just from looking at the title, The Great Kapok Tree, that this book is probably going to have something to do with a tree. All about this great Kapok tree. Obviously has a lot of importance, okay? So this book is written by Lynn Cherry, and it is a tale of the Amazon rainforest. So here we go. We'll listen to the story and focus on the main idea and the details. Two men walked into the rainforest. Moments before, the forest had been alive with the sounds of squawking birds and howling monkeys. Now all was quiet as the creatures watched the two men and then wondered why they had come. The larger man stopped and pointed to a great kapok tree. Then he laughed. The smaller man took the axe he carried and struck the trunk of the tree. Whack, whack, whack. The sounds of the blows rang through the forest. The wood of the tree was very hard. Chop, chop, chop. The man wiped off the sweat that ran down his face and neck. Whack, chop, whack, chop. Soon the man grew tired. He sat down to rest at the foot of the great kapok tree. Before he knew it, the heat and hum of the forest had lulled him to sleep. A boa constrictor lived in the kapok tree. He slithered down its trunk to where the man was sleeping. He looked at the gash the axe had made in the tree. Then the huge snake slid very close to the man and hissed in his ear. "Senor, this tree is a tree of miracles. It is my home where generations of my ancestors have lived. Do not chop it down." A bee buzzed in the sleeping man's ear. "Senor, my hive is in this kapok tree, and I fly from tree to tree and flower to flower collecting pollen. In this way, I pollinate the trees and flowers throughout the rainforest. You see, all living things depend on one another." A troop of monkeys scampered down from the canopy of the kapok tree. They chattered to the sleeping man. "Senor, we have seen the ways of man. You chop down one tree, then come back for another and another. The roots of these great trees will wither and die, and there will be nothing left to hold the earth in place. When the heavy rains come, the soil will be washed away, and the forest will become a desert." A toucan, a macaw, and a cock of the rock flew down from the canopy. "Senor," squawked the toucan, "you must not cut down this tree. We have flown over the rainforest and seen what happens once you begin to chop down the trees. Many people settle on the land. They set fires to clear the underbrush, and soon the forest disappears. Where once there was life and beauty, only black and smoldering ruins remain." A bright and small tree frog crawled along the edge of a leaf. In a squeaky voice, he piped in the man's ear. Senor, a ruined rainforest means ruined lives, many ruined lives. You will leave many of us homeless if you chop down this great kapok tree. A jaguar had been sleeping along a branch in the middle of the tree. Because his spotted coat blended in with the dappled light and shadows of the understory, no one had noticed him. Now, he leaped down and padded silently over to the sleeping man. He growled in his ear, Senor, the kapok tree is home to many birds and animals. If you cut it down, where will I find my dinner? Four tree porcupines swung down from the branch and whispered to the man, Senor, do you know what we animals and humans need in order to live? Oxygen. And Senor, do you know what trees produce? Oxygen. If you cut down the forests, you will destroy that which gives us all life. Several anteaters climbed down the kapok tree with their young clinging to their backs. The unstriped anteater said to the sleeping man, Senor, you are chopping down this tree with no thought for the future, and surely you know that what happens tomorrow depends on what you do today. The big man tells you to chop down a beautiful tree. He does not think of his own children, who tomorrow must live in a world without trees. A three-toed sloth had began climbing down from the canopy when the men first appeared. Only now did she reach the ground. Plodding ever so slowly over to the sleeping man, she spoke in her deep and lazy voice. Senor, how much is beauty worth? Can you live without it? If you destroy the beauty of the rainforest, on what would you feast your eyes? A child from the Yanomamo tribe who lived in the rainforest knelt over the sleeping man. He murmured in his ear, Senor, when you awake, please look upon us all with new eyes. The man awoke with a start. Before him stood the rainforest child, and all around him, staring, were the creatures who depended upon the great kapok tree. What wondrous and rare animals they were. The man looked about and saw the sun steaming through the canopy. Spots of bright light glowed like jewels amidst the dark green forest. Strange and beautiful plants seemed to dangle in the air, suspended from the great kapok tree. The man smelled the fragrant perfume of their flowers. He felt the steamy mist rising from the forest floor. But he heard no sound, for the creatures were strangely silent. The man stood and picked up his axe. He swung back his arm as though to strike the tree. Suddenly, he stopped. He turned and looked at the animals and the childs. He hesitated, then he dropped the axe and walked out of the forest. Okay, so after listening to this story, I hope you guys were thinking about what that big idea was. So you probably came up with something about how this was all about how the animals tried to convince the tree cutter not to cut down the tree. And he did. All the animals were able to convince the tree cutter not to cut down the tree because in the end he didn't. So we would say that that is like our big idea, okay? The animals trying to convince the tree cutter, not to cut down the tree. All of those supporting details that support the idea of trying to convince him not to cut down the tree could be all of those different animals, okay? So we could talk about the boa constrictor was one animal that tried convincing the tree cutter not to cut down the tree. We can go through all of them. The bees, Okay, learn another one, the monkeys, okay, the sloth. Then there was the birds, the tree frog, the jaguar, the porcupines. All of them had something to say about why he shouldn't cut down the tree. So all of those are our supporting details that support the big idea that the man should not have cut down the kapok tree. And then again, we know, obviously, this whole story revolved around the Great Kapok Tree, which was the title. All right, boys and girls? So again, make sure when we focus on our main idea and details, we're thinking about that big idea and then all of the other little parts of the story that support it. Okay, have a good day.